So as a fish biologist working in this region, one of the most important drivers for us is trying to make some sense of what we can do to recover anadromous salmon populations. What do we need to emulate with our restoration strategy to recover them on the landscape? What I'm familiar with is habitats that are really steep, mountainous habitats that beaver have made a living here for a long time. And we see that in a lot of systems today where beaver are missing, salmon populations have declined. And I think that's what's gotten me particularly to the point of understanding how important beaver are and how simple the recovery fix really could be. And it really is less about recovering salmon per se than actually recovering beaver. I've interacted with a lot of landowners from all walks of life. Kind of my gut feeling is that there's really just a misunderstanding. And I think part of that misunderstanding is how important they are for restoring how the whole process works, how aquatic systems work. Beaver are a real key component of healthy salmon streams. And for so many reasons that they're almost hard to list. It just goes on. And beaver are creating the habitat by changing the gradient of these steep mountain streams. The beaver is the builder, but the dam itself is what's creating the habitat. You take a stream that might be 3 to 6% gradient, which is shooting off a lot of high velocity water in the wintertime, and then you change a piece of that stream to 0% gradient. And that allows all kinds of things to happen. When you flatten out the gradient of a steep mountain stream, that pond that's created by the dam starts to trap sediments. So you're trapping these sediments high in the forest that are nutrient rich. They're the detritus from the forest, the canopy litter and so forth that's turned into a nutrient-rich sediment. And it's trapped behind the beaver dam, and that becomes the foundation for a really complex food web. When the salmon use those flats at the heads of these beaver ponds for spawning, they have this ready-made rearing nursery in the pond itself. As the fry emerge from the gravel, they drop down into this calm pond, and there's a food resource that's developing there. It's important for the dam to be winter stable to provide that slow, low velocity habitat in the winter time for salmon populations. The stability of those beaver dams is dependent on having a good foundation. So if you've got a large piece of wood, it's fallen across the stream, it's just a natural attraction for a beaver to shove some sticks up against. But we don't have a lot of those big trees falling in anymore. So are we making the right decisions on those upslope landscapes to make sure that those resources that are important to a stream still exist, that there's still wood in the riparian for shade and for falling into the stream channel into the future? I've been doing this type of work for 37 years now and done over 12,000 miles of stream inventory, and most of that's been underwater. Year after year, place after place, stream after stream, the salmon densities were always higher in a beaver pond. The total number of salmon juveniles was always higher in a beaver pond, and it's why we call beaver a keystone species, because they really provide this foundation for salmon production that is so monumentally important that you can't really produce salmon effectively without them. Although Coexistence seems like it would be something very simple. In other words, if you've got beaver that are having an impact on a plantation that you have, or an orchard tree, trees that you've put a lot of energy into, it does seem fairly simple to wrap those trees with some chicken wire and provide some protection. So, simple solution, but to the mind of someone else, it might be even simpler just to trap the beaver, or remove the problem. That's kind of how we deal with it today. So those are two simple solutions. One doesn't really benefit the ecosystem function, nature of that keystone species, because you're removing him from the population. But both of them would benefit the farmer. If we can get this keystone species back on the landscape at a level that was region-wide, we'd have such a radical impact on salmon populations that we essentially could probably stop spending money on it.